This is a further selection of my broad gauge locomotives which I've made for Trainz Railway Simulator, and this one shows, first of all, it's showing the steam loco Aeolus, as in Aeolian for the winds. So here it is, a little 222 with a massive driving wheels. Let's set her going, have a look. This is probably a slightly heavier train than she normally pulled. It's got the same selection as I used for Hurricane and Thunderer, but Aeolus was again one of these 1837 built locomotives, especially commissioned by Brunel for the broad gauge, then just still being built, and she ran for a number of years quite successfully under the tender mercies of Daniel Gooch, who managed to tease a reasonable performance out of her. And you'll see there that at the top of the chimney is the translucent or net-like or wire mesh of the spark arrestor. This was designed to prevent sparks from the coke which these early locos burned from flying out and setting light to hedgerows and crops and all this sort of thing. And she's got a fairly reasonable engine spec for trains, probably a little bit more powerful than she really needs to be, but nevertheless, to make her a reasonably working model for trains. And I think she really does add quite a bit to any sort of stud that you're going to assemble in a loco shed or operating a broad gauge service. Again, just using my standard footplate crew, a little more conventional than Hurricane and Thunderer, which I've displayed in an earlier video. But an example of one of the very early types of locos used on the Great Western Railway. And if we go over here we'll let Aeolus disappear off into the distance there, and we'll have a look at this one, which is Firefly. And this was Gooch's basic locomotive, and it was the ones that from about 1840 onwards. 1840 was the date of the prototype of Firefly. It's the type of locomotive that gradually began to supersede some of the rather remarkable motley collection of locomotives that were first put together for the Great Western Railway. And just as in my previous video showing Hurricane and Thunderer, she's pulling a passenger service made up of a mix of somewhat later types, although the one immediately behind the tender is the saloon, the family saloon, which was longitudinal seating, clerestory, and between the wheels, as you can see there, so that it was nicely balanced on the springs. It was meant to give it was aping, following the conventions of road carriages of the time. And so there we are, we have Firefly setting out, and this type of locomotive was the workhorse of the Great Western for about the next 10 years, from about 1840 to 1850, perhaps even a little bit later, and progressed quite well. The number of innovations introduced, quite a series in the number of locomotives in the class, but all of them were much more reliable, much more successful than than some of the early locomotives, including Aeolus, saw just a little bit earlier there in the video. And also in this one, Firefly's pulling the Long Charlie. That's that carriage there with the 4 axles, although they're not bogies, they are just 4 axles. And then we have so that's a second and another second, and the third, and the luggage or merchandise wagon, the tilt wagon, and then the luggage van right at the end, this iron monstrosity being hauled along at the end. Now the speeds that I'm running these at is obviously much slower than you can run them at, and the Great Western got up to some considerable speeds in its early days, 50-60 mile an hour, not that unusual, and some hair-raising rides, I should imagine. So there we are. Those are Fireflies. Definitely you want to include that in any ball gauge layout, because even towards the end of their days, they were using all sorts of duties until they were finally worn out. But really quite successful locomotives. I'm just going to slow it down a little bit so it doesn't run over the back of the Aeolus. This, of course, would not be the normal way in which they'd be running, because the time interval would be 5 minutes. So Aeolus was set off, and then they would wait 5 minutes before letting Firefly set off. These are the days before block signalling or anything like it, and so there was just space left between the locomotives. And if we zoom along now to, there we are, to this one here, this is in 1849, saddle tank. This one is Brigand. There were two of this time, Brigand and Corsair, both of which are available from my website. And this one is hauling, this is, as you can see, it's actually 440, although this is a fixed, this isn't a bogie at the front here, it's fixed wheels, and you've got 4 driving wheels there, and it's a saddle tank going over the top of the boiler, and very basic cab, completely open, of course. These early trains, these early locomotives provided very little, if any, protection for the crew. And behind them is a selection of, these are the fast fish wagons that were run, and these were designed for fast goods of all types, perishable goods, and I've made a variety of these, as you can see there. Different numbers, 223, 267, 11164, and then here these are quite remarkable. These actually look rather continental. This is a design which you do come across with steam railways on the continent, where you actually have a guards compartment, and there's the guard. You can actually see a guard inside there. I put both of the guards wagons here in the centre of the goods facility, goods carrying area, and so they could look along the train from their lookouts there and see how the train was doing, make sure it wasn't becoming separated or anything. But Brigand, oops, that's not the direction we want Brigand to go, is it? So just bring it to a halt. Let's set it going in the other direction. There we are. And Brigand, really quite successful. There's characteristic large driving wheels of early steam locomotives, designed to, as they thought, to operate as at high speeds, encourage the use of high speeds. But well, once they developed boiler pressure to a higher amount, that was really what did it for, what really allowed for an increased speed to be operated. So Brigand, one of a couple of ball gauge, Corsair's the other one, which is virtually identical. Oops, no, there we are. very prototypical, I would say that was, for changing the points in front of the train. So Brigand, one of a couple of saddle tank locomotives which I've modelled of the Great Western Ball Gauge, and again, really you want to include at least one in the any ball gauge layout that you might be doing. And internal, as you can see, internal cylinders there, internal pistons driving these, and I've actually basically fudged a lot of the detail underneath to keep the poly count down to make sure it loads and runs okay in Trainz. These are all running in Trainz a new era, SP3, the very latest of the updates. So they seem to work okay. I haven't put any loads in there, but that you can. They are set to take loads. So a nice selection, I think, of ball gauge locomotives. A second selection for you to consider creating a ball gauge section or ball gauge layout on your train setup. The track is mine, and you can download that from my website, and it works as the conventional Trainz track. I haven't yet worked out how to make this into the new procedural track, which creates its own junctions. So really you're stuck with the original Trainz junctions. I will get there, but it's a completely different approach to conventional track, so it needs a bit of planning, and at the moment I'm thinking of other things. So there we are, 3 fine broad gauge locomotives for you to consider downloading, free of charge of course. All of my models are freeware. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have, please give me a thumbs up. If you have any comments, please post them. Any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so.